Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unfold the story of a single flower. But this is no ordinary flower. It holds the key to China's culture, its medicine, and its very biodiversity. We're talking about an icon of virtue and a marvel of evolution. So yeah, let's get right into it.
Believe it or not, our story kicks off more than 2,000 years ago with none other than the philosopher Confucius. For him, the orchid scent, that subtle, humble fragrance, it wasn't just a smell. No, it was a metaphor for the perfect gentleman. Think about it. Someone who holds on to their principles with this quiet dignity, even when absolutely no one is watching. That's what he saw in this flower.
So that really makes you wonder, right? This deep, deep connection between a plant and a whole philosophy, it brings up a huge question. How in the world does a single flower come to embody the soul of a nation? How does nature shape a country's art, its identity, its very essence over millennia? All right, let's dive in and find out.
Okay, first up, we've got to talk about the orchid's role as a massive cultural icon. Specifically, it's one of the revered four gentlemen in Chinese art and philosophy. And this isn't some minor thing. This tradition has literally shaped the country's aesthetics for centuries. So here's how it works. Each of these four gentlemen gets a season and a virtue. You've got the plum blossom for winter, symbolizing resilience. Then there's bamboo for summer, representing integrity. The chrysanthemum stands for perseverance in autumn. And then, for spring, you guessed it, we have the orchid. It's seen as the ultimate symbol of purity, humility, and grace. Now, this reverence, it didn't just pop up overnight. It was built layer by layer over centuries by some of China's greatest minds. So, after Confucius, you have the exiled poet Qui Wan, who wrote about orchids as a symbol of his unwavering loyalty. And then, fast forward to 353 CE, the master calligrapher Wang Xizhi hosts the now legendary Orchid Pavilion gathering. This was a famous meeting of poets that pretty much forever cemented the flower's link to the highest ideals of art and scholarship. And here's where you can really see the power of that symbolism. In the 13th century, an artist named Zhao Mengzhen, his homeland had just been conquered by invaders. And what did he do? He started painting orchids with no soil, just floating there, rootless. It was this incredibly powerful, just heartbreaking metaphor for being uprooted, a silent artistic protest filled with grief for his lost nation. So you see this incredible cultural weight, right? Well, what's amazing is that it's matched by an equally incredible biological richness. Let's pivot now from philosophy to biology and take a look at just how diverse this plant family really is in China. So get this, China is a global hotspot for orchid diversity. We're talking about being home to over 1,700 distinct species. And what's just wild is that botanists are still finding new ones, hidden away in its most remote wilderness. Okay, so all that diversity is kind of concentrated in a few key groups, or what scientists call genera. For instance, you have Bulbophyllum, which is the biggest group, and it's known for some truly bizarre flowers. I mean, some of them mimic rotting meat just to attract flies. And then you have Dendrobium. Remember that name? We'll come back to it. A huge group that's not just beautiful, but also a cornerstone of traditional medicine. But wait, here's the part that'll blow your mind. A staggering 90%, 90 of all those 1,700 plus species are crammed into just 2.7% of the country's total land area. It's unbelievable. These tiny ecological hotspots, mostly down in the south and southwest, are the absolute treasure chests of China's orchid biodiversity. Okay, so we've got orchids as symbols of virtue and as marvels of biodiversity. But there's another profound layer to this story, another whole dimension of value. We're talking about their role as a cornerstone of traditional Chinese medicine. All right, remember I told you to remember Dendrobium? Well, here it is. Known as Shihu, it's probably the most famous medicinal orchid out there. In fact, it's considered one of the legendary 9 immortal herbs, which are believed to restore the body's vital essence, or yin. For centuries, it's been used to treat, well, almost everything, from digestive problems to failing eyesight. And this is where it gets really cool. Modern science is actually starting to validate these ancient uses. Pharmacological studies have confirmed it. Compounds in Dendrobium can genuinely inhibit stomach pathogens, they can help lower blood sugar, and they have powerful anti-inflammatory effects. It's a perfect example of modern proof, backing up ancient wisdom. So let's recap. We have a plant that is a cultural icon, a biological marvel, and a medicinal powerhouse. It seems almost perfect, right? But this entire irreplaceable legacy, well, it's now facing a very, very serious threat. The stark reality is this.
Nearly half, almost 1 out of every 2 native orchid species in China is at risk of extinction. And this isn't some vague, far-off problem for the future. It is an ecological crisis happening right now. And if you look at the breakdown of that crisis, it's grim. Over a third of all the species that have been assessed fall into the 3 highest threat categories: vulnerable, endangered, and critically endangered. Let that sink in. We're talking about hundreds of unique species teetering on the brink of disappearing forever. So what's causing all this? Well, it's basically a perfect storm of human activity. The single biggest driver: illegal overcollection for the ornamental flower trade and for medicine. And then you pile on habitat loss from agriculture and expanding cities, the growing stresses from climate change, and even their own delicate biology. I mean, many of these orchids rely on one single specific fungus in the soil just to be able to sprout. Take that away, and they're gone. Now, a story like this, with so much at stake, it could easily just end in despair. But that is not what's happening. Instead, we're seeing the start of a new and much more hopeful chapter. Let's take a look at how China is mounting this really sophisticated effort to protect its vital natural and cultural heritage. The strategy is basically a two-pronged attack. On one hand, you have what's called in situ conservation. That just means protecting the orchids right where they live, in the wild, inside a growing network of national parks and nature reserves. But at the same time, you've got ex situ conservation, which safeguards them outside their natural habitat. Think of it like creating a living genetic backup in these amazing world-class botanical gardens. And then, in 2021, there was a huge breakthrough. For the first time in 22 years, the government did a massive update of its list of protected plants. This single act granted powerful new legal protections to 292 more orchid species. It was a total game changer for conservation law in the country. And it's not just about laws on paper either. This is about active rescue missions. You have research institutes identifying the most critically endangered species. We're talking about some with only a handful of plants left in the entire world. And they're using these incredible high-tech lab techniques like micropropagation. This basically lets them take a tiny piece of plant tissue and grow it into thousands of healthy new seedlings. Then they can reintroduce them back into protected areas to restore wild populations. It is a genuine story of hope. So really, the whole point comes down to this. It's this incredibly powerful combination of ancient cultural reverence for the gentleman's flower and cutting-edge modern conservation science. That combination, that synthesis, is what defines China's unique path towards saving its flagship plant family. It's really not just about saving a plant, is it? It's about honoring a 2,000-year-old legacy. And that brings us to a final, pretty deep thought. When a nation goes to this lengths to save a species, one that's so deeply woven into its philosophy, its art, and its history, are they just protecting biodiversity? Or are they also fighting to preserve a vital piece of their own 2,000-year-old soul?